Hey good people, it's Ricky here for The Frugal Photographer. Let's talk about sharpness in our images. So look at this photo that I posted on my Instagram a while ago. Now, can you see any significant technical problems with it? You probably can't. But now let's look at this thing full screen. So if you're on a phone, you're not going to be able to tell. You're going to have to wait until you're on a computer. But let's really zoom into this photo. Now, whoa, that is a seriously unsharp photo. So what you're seeing right here So what you're noticing here is the difference between image size and what effect that has on perceived sharpness. So in other words, whether or not your final image will be perceived as sharp can depend pretty significantly on the final image size that your viewers are going to be looking at. So I hear a lot of people spend a huge amount of time, effort, and money trying to get this critical level of sharpness, this perfectly sharp image. But in my opinion, a lot of the time, you won't even be able to perceive that difference in sharpness. The sharpness will be there, but because the final image size isn't going to be large enough, no one will ever know that you took all these incredible steps and made all this incredible effort to make this incredibly sharp image, right? Because you're not making this 3 meter long print. Ultimately, all of this effort is completely in vain. So that's not to say that some photographers don't need to worry about that. There are photographers who make 3 meter long prints. There are photographers who are getting paid tens of thousands of dollars for a commercial shoot, and they have to hand over a technically perfect image to their clients. Most of us, however, don't. So I do headshots professionally, and when I first started, I didn't have the gear that I have now, and it just wasn't that good at really focusing on the eyes with the shallow depth of field that you have when you're doing headshots. If you use entry-level gear, you have entry-level AF systems, and so even though the image quality was fine, it was more than adequate for my headshots, I had extreme difficulty achieving critical sharpness, but ultimately it didn't matter. So here's a headshot, and here's another one, and here's another one. And none of these photos have achieved critical sharpness. And that's not to say that you should be completely okay with having these technical imperfections in your photos. You should always be striving to achieve a technical level of perfection. But the thing is if it's a little bit front focused towards the nose, if it's a little bit back focused towards the ears, will your client notice? No, they won't. Not at the sizes that you're going to be working with headshots. So if it's for actors, it's going to get printed at 8 by 10 inches. It's going to get handed to a casting director, right? 8 by 10 isn't large enough. If it's business people, it's going to be on computer monitors, which are usually 2 megapixels, right, to be viewed on LinkedIn profiles. And it doesn't matter. So even in a professional context, achieving critical sharpness might not be crucial. It can be a luxury, not a necessity. If you're not even close to having proper focus, of course, that's going to show up on an 8 by 10. But the point being that the sort of problems that you have with entry-level gear with not getting critical focus doesn't really matter that much. And if you can't even tell when the focus is off at an 8 by 10 print size, which you can't, then it makes a lot of advice that you hear like, oh, you need to upgrade from your kit lens because it's not sharp. Well, that's a technically true statement, but at what print size can you distinguish the difference between a kit lens and a high quality lens, right? Because the answer is going to be that's a pretty large print in order to distinguish those differences. And as an amateur, are you going to be printing at those sizes? Probably not. So if you want your final images to go on Instagram and Facebook, a kit lens is more than adequate. So here's another example of using mediocre gear. So here's a photo of the only commercial shoot I've ever done. And I used a Canon 70D, which is a crop sensor Canon, and I used Canon's ultra cheap 10 to 18 millimeter, that's their newest ultra wide. And it's good, it's not great, it's good by APS-C standards in terms of sharpness relative to the full frame, these amazing, extremely expensive ultra-wide angle lenses. This lens isn't nearly as sharp. And yet for my client, I did a print that's nearly a meter across. And there are no problems with sharpness. In fact, it is more than satisfactorily sharp. I do have some technical problems in this image related to using the 70D and its disappointing sensor. However, if I had taken it even with a more modern Canon crop camera like the 80D, I wouldn't have had those problems. So if you can make a massive print that looks great, I can't see any technical imperfections even when examining it closely. It makes you question whether or not you actually need to achieve this absurd level of sharpness that everyone seems to want these days. Some photographers 100% do need to worry about achieving this absurd level of sharpness, right? However, If you are a hobbyist, or even if you are a professional who doesn't print massively large, then really your effort would be better spent thinking about the artistic merit of your photos and not trying to achieve critical sharpness. This has been the Frugal Photographer. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.